Welcome to the first day of the rest of your life, and welcome to another episode of Vancouver Real. My name is Andy Zaremba, or at Andy Zaremba on Instagram. And with me behind the helm today, for the second time, is my brother Mike.
Hey everybody, pleasure to be here. Thanks for joining us for yet another Tedx Stanley Park featured Vancouver Real episode.
Yeah, and this is a double header today, so I took the liberty of going in and doing a float right before this podcast, and it was extremely magical, I have to say.
That's the beauty of having the podcast center located inside the float center, and you get to have those refreshing breaks.
Yeah, I had a really interesting moment in the tank today, actually. In the first 30 minutes was music, and Sylvia put this really chill, relaxed music on for me, which is really nice, got me really still, calmed me down. And then I started going back into an experience, actually, that I had in ceremony. And I started going really, really still, and I felt a strange sort of energetic rocking in my body, for lack of a better way of calling it anything. My body was completely still, but I felt this like little shimmer, and I'm not sure what that is exactly, but that's the same thing I felt during ceremony. And I had this weird onset of this really deep, deep calmness. And this is the second day in a row I floated too. And it's interesting when you go back to back like that or float more frequently, how you have these sort of deeper experiences.
They compound.
The first one is like, when the first one back, even after a week, I find to be a bit more scattered, a bit more defragging. My brain really has to calm down and get all the clutter out. And today I just slipped right into this very, very deep and still state. And it was amazing. It was wonderful.
Yeah, when we first got our first tank, the first 6 weeks I floated every other day, and that was incredible. It was such a cool experience, and I haven't done that since. We have some employees who will float every day for a month, and like just the stuff that they share and they experience when they do that is pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah.
It gets really interesting when you start to go back to back to back.
The most I've ever done is about 3 in a week.
Right.
But it would be neat to do an intensive.
Yeah, do
really
even a 10-day or something.
Like Dustin from Float Space. I think he did 100 days straight of floating, which is a lot of time alone in the dark, spending time with yourself, which can be very healthy for you. But enough about floating for right now.
Right.
If you'd like to give it a shot, you can go to the website floathouse.ca. Use the promo code Vancouver Real, and that will get you a 20% discount on a single float. And we should also mention the Vancouver Real community. We have Vancouver Real community Facebook page. And we also have the events page on vancouverreal.tv, where we have all of our events listed. We do monthly events, typically around different areas that are within the realms of Vancouver Real. So health and wellness, a little bit of tech,
professional development, personal
development, professional development, spirituality, mindset sort of stuff. We do these meetups typically monthly. However, we're on a bit of a hiatus right now because our community managers are both away in, where do they go?
I think they're
Bali. Yeah. Like everybody else in the world is going to Bali. So they're away right now. But if you want to get linked up with the community for all these free events, go to vancouverreal.tv, and it's under the event page, or link up with the Vancouver Real community page on Facebook.
Awesome. And then we'll also talk about our Mindful Mass community. Mindfulmass.org is the website. It's also on Facebook. I think it's Vancouver Flash Mob Meditation or something like that. It'll pop up when you search for it. And basically, it's a quarterly event that we do mass meditations, public displays of meditation, and kind of coordinated online. Then everyone just shows up, does this meditation, and then we kind of disperse. And it's a really cool little, consciousness bomb, if you will. So
exactly.
Mindfulmass.org, you can sign up for the mailing list there, or join the Facebook group page to see when the next event is. And you said we've got one in the potentials, right?
We're going for the spring equinox.
Cool.
And the location isn't confirmed yet, but it may be, if we get permission, at City Hall, which would be really cool.
That would be really cool.
Yeah, and I think we're going to have to bring umbrellas for that one because it will be outdoors. But I figured, multicolored umbrellas would look really good.
It would be really
a large
cool.
mass of people meditating.
Yeah, this is Vancouver.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, anyways, today we have, I don't know, what, the 6th or 7th installment of the Tedx Stanley Park
Yeah, we're
series.
getting closer.
And I'm really excited about our guest today. We have Amy Culler on the show, and welcome to Vancouver Real.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
So Amy Culler is a sex therapist, and she has a website called intimatewithamy.com. And how we start off these interviews typically with the Tedx Stanley Park speakers is we give you a chance just to give people a little synopsis or a little taste of what your talk is going to be about that day. So maybe you can share that with us and then explain why you chose that topic.
Gladly. I'm talking about intimacy. And what I do is I give individuals and couples realistic tools and techniques that foster physical intimacy. And I am excited to be sharing it on the Tedx Stanley Park stage, my main tool that is the basis of all of my work. So I'm very excited. It's been my dream to share this tool through a TEDx. So
Awesome.
It's a great honor.
Are you giving away the secret sauce on stage?
Giving away the secret sauce on
Wow,
stage.
Okay.
Right.
Wow, that's quite generous.
I want the world to have this.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I want the credit for it.
Okay. So revolutionary.
That's
so if
win-win, right?
Yeah.
So if you really want that, folks, you know what you have to do. Go to tedxstanleypark.com and get a ticket for the event.
Absolutely.
So why, this is obviously in line with your life's work as well and what you do for a living, but why this topic? Why do you want to share this on the stage today?
I am a sex therapist, basketball coach,
Whoa.
dance instructor.
That's quite the mix.
I know.
Yeah.
So I give people, if you wanted to learn to play basketball better, you wouldn't just talk to a coach. You'd actually get on the floor and he'd show you some moves.
That's true.
Exactly. And so if you were to actually sit in a sex therapist's office, you would be talking. And it really doesn't help couples. It just creates more distance a lot of times.
So it's pure, like it's at that point, it's almost just theory and tech and like, yeah. the
Right.
technical
And you're
stuff.
learning to talk about things. And
Right.
sometimes when it comes to physical intimacy, talking can feel like it's just going to bring up more issues and more problems. How do you talk about not liking the way your partner touches you? Or if you have sexual challenges, how do you reconnect in that? And of course, every relationship, there's bound to be intimacy issues, which is how do you feel safe with each other and how do you lean into each other? And you get to come home and then you have all those home issues. How do you create that safety?
Right.
So that's what I do.
And why is this so important to you?
Well, I found in my own marriage and in my own other relationships, when there are always intimacy issues, and they come up and it's natural. And I've been through lots of relationships in my experience. And I found myself sitting in a therapist's office and talking, and I'm like, okay, now we're talking about our problem. Even more problems come up. And then if there were physical issues or sexual issues or intimacy issues like that, you go see a sex therapist. And you know what sex therapy is? Talking, not really helping at all. So if now you're talking about how you don't like the way your partner has sex, and that can be really more problematic to a relationship. So I sat in a therapist's office and said, I really know how I would want this to be. And so I have spent the last 12 years learning everything I needed to do what I've been doing and doing what I've been doing with over 10,000 clients.
Wow.
10,000, holy cow. So how does what you do for therapy differ from a regular therapist then?
Oh, thank you for asking. Well, I believe that sometimes talking about it is not what we need to do. So what I do is when couples contact me, I have a separate conversation with each partner and I say, what would you like to learn and experience? And what would you like your partner to learn and experience? What is the issue? And I can immediately find out what it is. I immediately get a feel for it because I've been doing this for such a long time. And then they come in and I get them comfortable, like
Relaxed,
feeling safe, not a whole lot of talking, just going, I've got this, we're okay. And I sit them in a chair facing each other.
Yeah.
And if they're okay to look at each other, I'll have them look at each other and just go through this breathing exercise. And if there's really a lot of resentment and issues between them, I'll have them look at each other's feet and start there so that it's like just becoming aware of themselves and aware of each other. And you were talking about meditation earlier, and I'm actually giving a workshop tomorrow and on Saturday at a meditation center here in Vancouver, and it's about mindfulness for better sex.
Okay. What would that mean?
Mindfulness for better sex is, well, I'm going to describe my favorite thing, which is becoming present to yourself and your whole full body through breathing and presence, and those transformations that you felt while you're in the float.
Right.
And then if there was somebody else and you were cueing into their energy, so now you're connecting with another person.
It sounds like tantra. Is that similar to what you practice?
It's, you know what, it is tantra,
Yeah.
but it's tantra without the word tantra.
Okay.
And the reason that I say tantra without the word tantra is because tantra can evoke so many other images and thoughts in people.
Right.
And tantra can immediately people jump to the sexual nature of it. And mine is about the intimacy nature, which is what tantra really is. It's about that energy in between you and the space in between. Well, I've broken it down to really simple techniques.
Okay, so that you can actually start to practice with your partner.
Yeah. So what I've done is I've broken it down where the doctor, lawyer, car auto guy. It's sort of like, okay, what do I do? I don't want to. Men are uncomfortable with words like hugging and emotional things like that. So I find ways around it. If you follow, in my belief, if you follow step A, B, and C, now you're bonded.
Right.
I've broken down that tantra step to 3 steps in, as I call it, ABC, so that you're completely connected and on the same wavelength. I have found simple steps to get you there. And then the XYZ, as I call it. So if you follow the XYZ out, you still feel connected as you separate, and that's what keeps that bond going even when you're not physically together.
Interesting.
And then you can fill in the rest of the alphabet with whatever's right for you.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit more about that XYZ? That's a really interesting concept. So like kind of take us through what that looks like a little bit, or that philosophy.
Gladly. So the ABCs, would break it down to be, I love to use this, it's actually foreplay.
Okay.
So I describe foreplay as being really aware of yourself, your whole body, your mood, letting it drop, taking those few breaths like you have to in the float, and then becoming aware of your partner's whole body. So I have a routine for that. That's just, a head to toe sweep down the front, a head to toe sweep down the back. You can do it clothed. Because to me, foreplay is about becoming aware of yourself and connected. Boom.
I think, let's pause there for a second, because I think that's super interesting. And I think it makes a lot of sense, but maybe not, because a lot of people might get in their head a little bit too much and okay, what should I do? What next move? Where you're saying, no, don't even worry about them right now. Come and where are you at? And let's connect there first, right? That's where it starts?
Correct.
Cool. Okay.
Correct. So I have steps that bring you to yourself simply.
Right.
And
then ideally both partners are doing that. And I'm assuming from A to B to C is kind of going from internal to interternal or something like that, right?
correct.
Okay.
So we know that there's a lot of disconnection potentially in relationships that happens.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think are some of the root causes of that? Why is it so common when all human beings, this is in our nature, right? We are meant to, reproducing, to say it very robotically and mechanically, but we're all physical beings, and this is part of who we are as human beings, right? But why do we have so many issues around this if it's such a natural part of our being?
Well, we're pack animals, so we're meant to be in connection. There's a therapist wired for connection as we are. There's a few reasons. I like to also study the science behind it. So one of my favorite things is how hormones change. How hormones change is fascinating to me. And so we become immune to each other's smells and each other's chemicals.
Right.
Right. So, and that starts to happen because you've been through, like when you're with somebody at first and you've got that erotic going because they're new to you, you actually release a different pheromone than you do when you've smelled them all the time. It's not as like zing,
Right.
Right. So the science piece of it is also really fascinating. That's part of the reason why it takes something different to tune in together and turn on together.
So if we're thinking from sort of an evolutionary standpoint, why would it be advantageous for a species to release these hormones, get them, all excited and ready to go, and then all of a sudden have it die off? And then, because this seems to be the pattern that exists quite frequently, correct?
Correct. I love this one. You ready?
Yeah.
Nature is interested in our reproduction. It laughs as our happiness. It has not interested in us being happy. It's interested in us reproducing. So we're made to reproduce. We're not made to be happy.
Right. Right. So it is to perpetuate the species, which
yeah.
I'm gonna take it one step further and say potentially maybe monogamy isn't natural to our species. Would that be something? Yeah, in the right ballpark.
I think that's in the ballpark.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, given our modern day society, we know that being in intimate relationships works really well because of how our society is structured potentially. So how do we bridge this gap, I guess, is the question, because most people want to have an intimate, stable relationship, yet we're battling our own nature and biology, which wants us to go out and spread our DNA all over the place. So how can we bridge those two and stay committed in a relationship?
I believe that comes from the intimacy. I believe that when you are secure, bonded, feeling safe with your partner, even when you're not physically together, that from that place, everything can be negotiated. So that's actually something I help couples with when we do get to the talking part. So it's it comes up in a lot of relationships. Either one partner wants to explore something that the other partner has no interest in. Sometimes one partner is no longer interested in sex. And sometimes it's something like, really, you want to do what? So I will actually sit with couples and say, okay, what would it take for you guys to feel safe with each other so that your partner can go off and explore this or experience this? And then I'll also find other ways to bring in the experience. So my favorite thing to tell people is the shared experience. So a great way to keep things interesting and to feel safe with each other is if you're completely bonded and, I've got
connected that way.
Yeah, I've got two beautiful men in front of me. So I'll talk about, that thing that it's most couples are interested in. Okay, what if we include another partner? And I will encourage partners to do that in a way that they feel safe, really safe with each other. Do a ritual. You used the word ritual before. Do a ritual before you go. Do those A, B, and C that I was talking about so that you're feeling bonded and safe. Have a conversation that says with each other what I want to experience,
right?
What I don't want to experience, so that you know that you're going into it like teammates.
Yeah.
Again, if you were playing football together, you'd say, okay, I got the defensive, you got the offensive. You come up with a plan. We're in this together.
Absolutely,
so that ritual. And then have the shared experience.
So having the shared experience is what creates a safe environment for these things to take place. What are some of the biggest fears that come up in partnerships or relationships?
Fear of loss. I mean, I think that love is giving into the fear of loss. To actually love someone is to give in to the fear of loss. So I think that's the biggest challenge that people face is, what do I do if I lose this person? What do I do if I end up alone or hurt? So if you go into an experience saying my concern is that you're going to like the other tall, gorgeous blonde, because it's easy for me to say I'm not, the tall, young, gorgeous blonde way more than me, then your partner will know to make sure that he's connected to you. Or he can say, never. That wouldn't be a case. But to say your fears out loud to your partner is the vulnerability that you can have when you have that kind of deep intimacy, you know? And I've known where partners have agreed to go in and do something together or share an experience, and one partner has to say at the last moment, I'm really not comfortable with this. This isn't okay. And you're in it together. So, okay, we're not doing it. I'm all about keeping you safe. And what I find is that the safer couples feel together, the more adventures they can share.
So you got to kind of exercise that muscle of feeling safe together and like doing it. And like, maybe that's a good question. How would you exercise that muscle like to generate that feeling of safety with each other?
Okay, so that comes down to an everyday ritual, I think. So what I'm going to be sharing through my TEDx is a particular sound sequence of sounds that I've made that when made together really unite. It's like matching the same frequency. But until I give away that too, I'll say that one of the other great ones is saying someone's name, like really settling into yourself so that you're like relaxed and comfortable and just looking at that beautiful face and saying, Andy. Sorry, I can't resist. It just, I mean, hearing our names spoken in the space of love and in tenderness, as opposed to, I mean, I have seen couples cry over that, especially a man. Because as she's looking at him and saying, Mike, and he's crying saying, I haven't heard her say my name except in contempt.
Right. And from that, and from that energy, from that place, I think you're right. You know? I think that's significant for sure. Very interesting. Very cool.
So, it's tantra, but you don't call it that because of the maybe preconceived ideas around that word.
The implications of it, and also because I've really developed my own method, which is sort of a cross between the Tantra, the science that I've learned through many modalities of therapy that I'm certified in, and again, all the psychological and therapeutic stuff and the science pieces of it. So it's a mixture of all of it.
A mixture of all of it. So it's your own system.
Yeah.
Now there's a whole idea around sexual energy and how that is transmuted into other things potentially. So it's like it can come across in a relationship with a partner, or it can be like with what you produce in the world, whatever businesses you might have out there, or creative outlets, or whatever. Is there a way to build that so you have more energy to go out and do whatever it is that you want to do in the world?
Absolutely. Thanks for asking. That is the XYZ.
Right.
Perfect.
That is
so this is where you actually go out, and now it's you're taking it into the world with you, I'm guessing.
Well, what the XYZ is, because I'm all about the piece that you hold together. So the XYZ piece of, for the ABC is the foreplay connection part. The middle part I'll call sex, but I actually call it pleasure, because it's whatever you do, whether you're making out in the car or you're, in a dungeon somewhere, that's up to you.
Yeah.
And the XYZ of it is, you remember at the beginning, you become aware of your own body. This is where you lock the memory and you lock the energy of the experience that you've just shared into your body.
Awesome. Yeah.
And you're locking it into each other's body. You're locking in that experience, and it stays with you. So too frequently, when an experience, an intimate physical experience is over, it's like boom, boom, out. Or your boom, boom washed it off of you. So again, science has a lot to do with it. So let it soak into your body. Say your partner's name so that it's locked in. Mike, Andy.
That's
How
right.
can I resist?
That's right, everybody.
How can I resist?
I'm going to have to let my fiance listen to this one. Okay. She can listen to anyone she wants. But no, I think that's really cool. I think that's super significant. And then I can think back to some personal experiences where we've done that just unconsciously. Like we not planned consciously to do that. But you're right. There's something about just like, after the climactic moment or whatever, you just stay there.
Yeah, the afterglow.
Yeah. And just like settle into it. And it's honestly, it's very, it's like powerful. It's transcending, like energetically. If you let yourself, it's like the float tank. Like when you really go deep into it, the same thing. Like that, every moment has that opportunity of depth. So, and after you have that connection with the, reciprocal other of the feminine masculine dynamic, shit, man, it's awesome. It's right there.
And on that note, on the transcending part, what is possible? Like you hear things about this sort of practice, and I'm just curious. Like I don't want to say, but where can it go? Like what could a peak experience look like?
Well, without much practice, even, I'm thinking of one particular couple who came in to experience those peak experiences, and it was about him. So she was, just going there, she was able to fully feel multiple orgasmic, and he would just get so lost in her experience, and then he was like, zip, done. So they came in to actually enhance his orgasm, which is a unique switch. And by teaching her and by him really moving the energy all through his body, and I help them. So I'm there doing hands-on work with them, but I have all clean boundaries. And by doing that, we were able to give him multiple full-body orgasms for like 45 minutes. He was like, I call it levitating, just like
shaking
off of him, just fully shaking for 45 minutes.
Wow. Like I had this experience during a ceremony, which I had mentioned the ceremony before during the introduction, but it was actually a plant medicine ceremony in Peru. Ooh. And it was on a medicine called Vilca, which I'm not going to get into detail. If you want to know what Vilca is, go Google Vilca. But what it showed me visually, actually, in this experience, was a ball of yellow, bright light energy that was down below. And it showed me that I can actually take that and move it around to different parts of my body. And I actually could visually see this. And I was just curious because at that point, too, we had been practicing abstinence for over a month because you have to build that energy up before you go into ceremony. What is what I'm talking about, is that possible? And if that is possible, what can be done with that?
I actually have an exercise, and I call it the light bulb exercise, and it is exactly what you just described. And I'm actually going to be taking people through it in that course on Saturday, and I find it incredibly helpful, especially for men. So this is the way I'll describe it for normal man. You're obviously a warrior man. And so for a lot of people, you get that turn on, you get that sexual thought, you have that energy. And then what I see it do is I see it go right down, like smoke is coming out of the bottom of you. Yeah. So it's sort of like, ooh, yeah. And your head lights up and you're like zing, zing, zing. And then it goes zoop and falls out the bottom, and I see it. It's like... You
actually visually see it?
I visually see it.
Whoa.
It's like a pout of smoke. It's like, oh, what's that? It's like the negative thought. It's like it fired up here, and then the smoke goes boof. So what I do is, as it's lighting up here, feel a light bulb up there going zing, zip, 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 and I hear that light bulb lighting up going zip, 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 zip. That's how I feel it, and then go, and then you bring it down your body, and it's like saying your own name. So for me, I say Amy. I can feel it right when I do that, and I have a light bulb in my perineum. It's not a real light bulb.
I understand.
Hey, whatever floats your boat.
Yeah, whatever floats your boat. So it is. That's that yellow ball of light that you saw.
It's interesting because and the funny thing about that too was that I had never studied this at all, and it was something that was shown to me potentially as a tool for, I'm not exactly sure what, to be honest with you, but it gave me that experience of actually visually showing me that energy, which was really interesting. And I'm just curious on what to make of that, and what can be done with that.
So that's what that means to me, is that's sort of like that light bulb energy. So I describe it like you have a light bulb in your perineum and you have a light bulb on your top.
Yeah.
And part of that XYZ is take that energy and lock it in. So sometimes if a man finishes, he's like, ugh, and that's it.
Right.
But if you keep that sound going and that motion going and saying your partner's name and doing some breathing, and then go to that light bulb in your head and lock that energy into the light bulb in your head, and then lock that energy into the light bulb in your perineum, both of you are like.
So when you say that, how do you actually do that? So how do you do you just visualize it moving through you? Do you feel it moving through you? How does that actually work? Or am I giving away too much right now for it?
No, it's hard to do it without the tool that I'm dying to unfold. But I'm going to just do it this way. So if you put your hand on top of your head and you say your name, it's awesome. Also, if you're ever I know a lot of people have anxiety or anxiety attacks, your day is getting away from you. You put your hand on top of your head and you say your name, Amy. And it's incredibly calming. So it locks your energy into you. And the way that I teach this light bulb exercise in dire emergencies, and I'll review that in a moment, is to actually put your hand between your legs and one hand on top of your head, and you say your name, Amy, 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 and so that it really helps to hold that energy in. And when you're doing the XYZ with your partner, it doesn't have to be quite so methodical and ritual and quite strange. But if you're holding your partner and locking the energy in on their top and on their perineum, because that's where our energy runs, and even if it's like a leg through there, or you're still Legoed together, for lack of a better metaphor, it really locks in that energy. And you can take it with you, like having access to that yellow energy ball below you.
That's what I was saying. So I guess you can take that into the world, use that towards whatever you want. You can use it towards work or being creative or exercising, would that be correct in assuming?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So then you're pulling up from that root energy, which is your creative field for men and women. So you know what you've got, that pool of energy there. Instead of letting it go and fall out of you, go, circulate it and light that light bulb, and you can really feel it.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it just shows you it talks to you about the power of your intention in your focus and your consciousness. If you bring attention to something, no matter what it is, externally or internally, it's I don't know, this is where metaphysics kind of comes into play, which we maybe don't technically have scientific explanations for accurately yet, but on quantum levels they kind of say we do. But anyways, it's it's amazing what you're able to do when you really bring your genuine conscious awareness to anything.
Absolutely. Really is.
Yeah. Interesting.
I just wanted to follow up because I didn't want to leave it hanging.
Yeah.
I mentioned emergency situations.
Right.
And I've been honored to work with people with special needs. And one of the problems that has happened with special needs is some of these young men with special needs, when their sexual energy is running like that, they'll be like dogs. They're like hump people.
Right.
They're they don't know what to do with that sexual energy.
Right.
And I have taught them, so I've done workshops with special needs people and taught them to put a hand on their head and hold on to themselves, and do this rocking and breathing thing. And it's actually helped. So it may look strange, and I've had nurses tell me that it looks strange, but they're able to self-regulate.
That's
Wow.
huge.
That is.
Very
It's
interesting.
amazing. Yeah. How does the medical profession in general sort of view the work that you do?
Well, that's interesting.
It's a mixed bag, I'm guessing.
It's a mixed bag. I am really fortunate to have the support of a number of doctors. So I get referrals from doctors. It's been doctors who've brought me in to work with special needs and spinal cord injuries. And part of my heart into doing this work came from helping gentlemen with prostate issues. In a former relationship of mine, my partner had prostate issues. I was like, "Oh, come on, I can cure this." And I did a lot of research, and I did. I cured his prostate issues, and then I cured another partner's erectile challenge issues.
How did you do that?
And I researched like crazy, and I can explain to men how their bits are built in a way that helps them make everything work better. Can I take a minute and do that in my way?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know how a worm crawls?
Yeah, an inchworm.
An inchworm.
Yeah.
So the first part comes out, and then the second part has to catch up with it, and then the first part goes, and the second part catches up with it. So sometimes men realize that when they're in a relationship or they're having a lot of sex, it seems like their member gets bigger. It does. It really does, because when that perineum is fully relaxed, the end of the worm can catch up with the beginning of the worm. You're built like your bits are an ectoskeletal system, exactly like a worm.
Yeah, right.
So
makes sense.
So I'm guessing too, if you're not relaxed and you're in a stressed out situation, you're in that fight or flight sort of response, you're not necessarily thinking about reproducing at that point. So your body is going to withdraw everything and make sure that you're being as safe as you can while you have to deal with whatever you're dealing with.
that would make sense.
Is that
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
From a man in the jungle kind of thing. Yeah,
Right.
That makes perfect sense. And when you're with a partner, you're more sexually relaxed, so your sex is more relaxed.
Right, and I heard for a man to get erection, they actually have to have a parasympathetic response happen. Is that correct? Like, was like they have to be in a relaxed state in order for that to happen, and then it switches back and forth throughout. I can't remember the whole cycle how it all works, but there's something along those lines.
Well, the parasympathetic nervous system
Yeah.
is the nervous system that relaxes you. So exactly what you were saying. If you're in fight or flight, you're gonna have a hard time getting an erection.
Right.
So, and my work came from helping men with sexual challenges, and then I wanted to help their relationships. So I then went off and became a therapist and a sex therapist, and then women started showing up with health issues, so I researched health issues there. And I've been really fortunate because I do have doctors who've been available for me to say, okay, I have this. What could this be? This is what this seems like to me. What if I did this? Does this make sense? So it's been really, really great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it's amazing how it's like such a mind-body connection. Obviously, like the psychology, the physiology, but then like we were kind of saying, then the element beyond that, even the intention, the consciousness, the energy perception, whatever you want to call it, right? And how it's so holistic that way. So imagine like your training and your past experience. Like you said, like you bring in the science, you bring in the tantra or the spirituality or whatever, and you kind of tie it all in, because it is a quintessential holistic kind of experience, I would say, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that's exactly what I say. So I talked about foreplay earlier, that connection to yourself and connection to your partner.
Yeah.
And that's the mind piece. So that's the mind connection. And then that middle piece, the D through Y,
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
would be pleasure. And that's the whole body connection. And then the XYZ is the part where we get to lock it in.
Right.
And that's the spirit.
Yeah.
So I just outlined for you my 3 steps of great sex and how it's the mind, body, spirit that go and flow with foreplay, pleasure, and afterglow.
Do you have any online resources that people can tap into for this kind of stuff? Like, what's your website or?
I have intimatewithamy.com.
Right.
And I'm currently putting together an online course because I want couples to be able to do therapy at home.
Right. Perfect.
Yeah, it's definitely a convenient way to do it these days, for sure.
Not just that, but this is intimacy. This is your privacy. This is about your boundaries. And I can understand why a lot of people don't want to come see me in person.
Right.
So I've been doing, Skype sessions. I've even done Skype sessions where one partner recorded it and then played it for their partner because their partner was too afraid to be in the room.
Right. And so what sort of like from this type of work, what are some of the more like powerful personal transformations that you've witnessed from the people that you've worked with? Like, and what character traits about them have you seen literally evolve and kind of maybe like flourish after this kind of work?
I've seen women who've dealt with sexual trauma in their life who are used to shutting down even with their partner, begin to feel so safe with their partner that they're the ones initiating. Even with their partner at home, they're the ones initiating for let's make out in the car, all these things that they've cut themselves off from exploring because they were dealing with shame or uncomfortableness or trauma. And suddenly they're like, I feel safe and I'm dying to experience those things. So I've actually had couples where it's like she is fully expressed out in the world, showing up where before she was a little bit more like a wallflower. And also those couples where they've been together for 25 years and they're bored and the kids have moved out of the house and they're still having sex the same way they did when they first got together, when they were 19 years old or 24. And it's never changed because it sounds really risky to pull out the blindfold, or what is she going to say if I'm curious to try that thing I saw in porn? So
yeah, well, it's interesting because what is it? 50 Shades of Grey was like the biggest something. They had the movie did really well and the book did really well. I don't know exactly the numbers.
Massively popular.
Massively popular.
It awakened a lot of women. I even heard from a very close girlfriend of mine who was in a really bored relationship for 20-something years. And she told me she said, you know what it was for our relationship? I'm like, what? Actually, we were right here. She was here for a cruise. And she's like, what? I'm like, what? What was it after 20 years that got you back together? And she's going, 50 Shades of Grey. And I'm like, excellent. So, I mean, I even in my sessions teach things, and even in my workshops. So couples leave having actual real tools of how to tie up one hand at a time, please. Because sometimes people freak out when both hands are tied up, and all kinds of things can happen with that. So, how to do that, or how to properly pull someone's hair, how to take your partner, because people feel awkward doing those things. But if I'm there showing them, then it's easy.
Very cool.
And okay, I'm sure they're working through a lot of potential old programs and beliefs that that's wrong. They shouldn't do it like that. So it's like you have to work through all of that with them and be like, it's actually okay. Yeah, and
also for a lot of men, for a lot of power men, they so want their woman to be able to do that for them. And for a lot of women, it's like, well, they'll say it to me, I'm embarrassed. I feel silly. And I'm like, oh, you won't. You won't.
In what way?
They'll feel silly or embarrassed to take the power position.
But why won't they?
Oh, because they're like, finally you get to tell him what to do. And exactly what you want.
Yeah.
For example, I'm remembering the woman who came in, and she's, he's such the power guy, and she was like, I'm exhausted. I'm going, oh, okay, I got you. You're exhausted. Okay, so he's just going to sit at your feet, and you're going to stroke his hair while he massages your feet. I can do that. Yes, that's what that's gonna.
So totally reversing like their relationship dynamic,
and allowing her. I can't imagine that she sits at his feet and massages his feet.
Right.
But if he wanted that power play, and if he wanted her to take more of the dominant role, and she's going, but I'm not a dominant person. I'm going, don't you want your feet rubbed? And she's like, oh, you mean really? And I'm like, yes. Well, what else can I have him do? Anything.
Right.
Anything.
Right.
Cool.
So one of the things I'm going to share, one of the things I'm giving in my TEDx, and because this is a great one and it goes great with that. So as I say, if you want a man, men like to have purpose. So if you want, men like to, so you say, honey, can you take out the trash? It's like, can you please take out the trash? Can you please take out the trash for me. Now he's like, oh yeah. Oh yeah. Now it's not a chore, it's something I'm doing for my partner. So, a lot of women respond to the same thing. So I tell women all the time, just you want him to do something, you want him to help you make dinner. Can you help make dinner for me? I mean, as soon as you add that little piece, he's like, yeah, I'm stepping up to the plate.
Right. Huh.
Gives them purpose.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's like a miniaturized version, a microcosm of the hero's journey, if you will.
Describe. Elaborate.
Oh, well, you set forth a challenge for him and you give him purpose and meaning behind the entire thing. You go and you complete that task and there's a reward for you at the end, which is sort of like the narrative for like the hero's journey.
There you go.
Yeah.
The
No?
condensed version. Yeah,
No,
exactly.
that's true.
Mhm.
Yeah, you get that purpose. Yeah.
So yeah, you're giving that purpose and
Yeah.
he feels good and manly and he's like, contributing to the relationship in that way, which...
And he knows what's needed from him, which is
Right.
a big ambiguous for men these days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Knows what's needed. Because I guess, why is that? Do women not communicate properly? Or what they want, I should say?
Expectations. When it comes to expectations, men build a lot of self-expectations. I call them unspoken expectations. So for women, the unspoken expectation is you have to look good. You got to put a little effort in. You got to look good. You can be as large as you want, as small as you want, as long as you're looking good. I hate to simplify things like this, but I'm doing it. For men, there's like a million unspoken expectations. Is my car the right car? Am I driving the right car? Am I wearing a belt? Is my hair right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is my hair right? Do I have the right job? Did I say the right thing? Did I pick the right restaurant? It's like all these unspoken expectations. And
Right.
each culture has their own list of unspoken expectations.
Interesting.
Right. And
Yeah.
I heard an interesting take on that actually, and how it can be a lot of pressure for men to approach women and why they have so much anxiety when they do that, simply because women are simply the portal to them potentially perpetuating themselves on to the next generation. So when they get rejected by a woman, basically what they're saying is, no, you're not worthy of having your genes passed on to the next generation. So it's like this huge existential thing as opposed to just like, oh, I got rejected. It's like, no, they're rejecting you and saying, no, you don't deserve to continue on your line is what they're saying, more or less.
Right.
Which is, yeah, a little bit more pressure than one might think. But it's like the whole idea that's like, when a woman rejects you, she's basically saying, no, we don't need to have you anymore.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't even taken it that far back, and that's really interesting.
Yeah, JPB.
Yes, Jordan Peterson. Yeah.
It's a Jordan Peterson thing. But
That's good.
anyways.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
thank you for that.
Well, because it does blow it out to like obviously, when you have a traumatic experience, that's not really happening now. But like, it's like, like the fight or flight response, for example, like, that whole response is to like save our lives potentially. But obviously, like, we're in that frequency at different times every day. And it's not, even though it's not, our lives aren't really in danger necessarily, but yeah, kind of like, but that's like the reaction we're having.
Mm-hmm.
And that scenario there is like, yeah, he's not obviously not worthy of, existing beyond his generation.
Or at least she's saying that you're not.
But you're right. But on one level, that kind of is what it is. It
is what it
so it
is.
makes it really intense.
Yeah.
Well, it can be. So
Yeah. But I think most people aren't even consciously aware of that. I think most people they're like, oh, that hurt. But why did it hurt?
And the why is interesting too, because as I say, a lot of times men are being rejected because of the way that they're approaching or because of the way that they're initiating, and sometimes they don't even know it.
I think
It
most
could
times
totally
they don't
be
know
that
it.
as well, for sure. But then the whole sexual selection process, right? Women like to pick the most dominant men because they want the best genes for their offspring. So it's like, most men, 50% of men don't even reproduce. They don't even have children. So it's like, basically, like, if you reproduce as a man, you're already one step ahead of the game. But it's like women are basically part of the whole natural selection process, which helps perpetuate the species, and that's why we evolve and become better, because they're picking off the top of the hierarchy as opposed to the people that don't necessarily, contribute or are not as fit to go on to the next generation.
Wow.
No, maybe.
No, I think you're right. I think there's a lot of.
good.
I think you're talking about. So it's like the higher, and we choose up, but there's plenty of people in the bottom pool.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's why they say, like,
I mean,
I think
And they're picking each other.
And
most of our ancestors are female, because we have way more female ancestors simply because, like, most men actually don't reproduce. I think the average woman has one child, and then the average man. No, sorry, the average man. How does it go? I can't remember the whole stat.
But it's like point something. It's not even like.
No, it's not that. It's like
okay.
maybe the average woman has 2 children, and yeah, I'm screwing up completely. 50% of men don't have children. There we go.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I'm going to look that stat up.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm definitely not. This is not my area of expertise, so I'm kind
All
of throwing
good.
things together that I've heard online. But
Oh, good. But,
yeah.
but that's
But
interesting.
it's an interesting concept for sure.
Yeah, and it would be
Yeah.
interesting with my work, so I'm going to have to look that up now.
Cool.
Excellent.
And
So,
in
go ahead.
in relationships, that rejection, so sometimes that rejection happens in relationship and when you're feeling safe with each other, and then you're feeling rejected in your own relationship. That's the part I just wanted to mention.
Right.
Mm.
So not just natural selection, but now you've selected somebody and you're in a relationship with somebody who's constantly rejecting you.
Right.
And a lot of people find that feeling as well.
Yeah, that wouldn't feel
That
too
makes
good.
yeah.
For sure. All right. Well, is there anything else you'd like to get out there today before we see you on the big stage?
Not much at all, just that I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much for letting me share my message with you. And I'm very excited to share my simple ABC techniques and the rest of my techniques with the world.
Awesome.
It's going to be
Thank
exciting.
you.
I'll be in the audience. Roger's been so kind to
Nice.
give me a few tickets for doing these interviews. So my partner and I will be there. So we're going to take that little tip and run with it, hopefully.
Excellent. Then I'm going to want to hear back from you how it works for you.
Amazing.
Great.
All right. Well, anything else you want to throw in there, Mike?
No, I'm good to go. Thank
Okay,
you.
well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. There's a ton of information in there. The website is intimacywithamy.com.
Intimatewithamy.com.
Intimatewithamy.com. Amy Culler, sex therapist. Find her. You're on social media. I'm sure you're out there. Go to the website.
There it
Easy
is.
enough. If you like what you heard today, leave us a rating and review on iTunes, YouTube, or Stitcher. Like, share, comment, all that good stuff. And if you want to give flotation therapy a try, use the promo code Vancouver Real. That will get you a 20% discount on a single float. And link up with the communities. So Vancouver Real Community and Mindful Mass.
Perfect.
And that's it.
Until next time.
To whatever is.
Do whatever is.